In the quiet hours before dawn, the faint hum of a car engine echoed near the Foix Reservoir. Moments later, flames pierced the darkness, an inferno consuming metal, smoke, and secrets. When firefighters arrived, they expected an accident. What they found instead was a nightmare. A body burned beyond recognition, sealed inside the trunk of a car. The victim was a police officer. Someone who had sworn to protect the city now lay lifeless, betrayed by those closest to him. But who could have done something so cold, so calculated? As investigators traced the final hours of his life, what began as a tragic discovery would unravel into one of Spain's most shocking stories, filled with love, jealousy, and a deadly conspiracy that no one saw coming. If you're a fan of true crime and criminal investigations, you won't want to miss our new book, The Ultimate Book of Serial Killers: 180 Files of the World's Most Notorious Murderers, now available on Amazon. You can also purchase the PDF version directly from our website for instant download. You'll find the link in the video description and in a pinned comment. Now, let's dive into today's case. Pedro Rodriguez was born in Barcelona into a troubled and divided family. His relationship with his father and sister was distant, leaving him emotionally tied only to his mother and his brother, Juan Antonio. When their mother passed away, Juan Antonio became Pedro's main source of support, both emotionally and within the family. From a young age, Pedro had an intense passion for motorcycles and sports. Athletic, energetic, and determined, he pursued a career that reflected his love for movement and discipline. In 2008, he joined the traffic division of the Guardia Urbana, the police force that operates exclusively within the city of Barcelona. Meanwhile, his brother followed a similar path, training to become a police officer as well. For context, in Spain, the Guardia Urbana handles municipal duties within Barcelona, while the national police cover the rest of the country. In 2014, Pedro married a woman named Patricia, and together they had a son. But the marriage was short-lived. Within a few years, Patricia began to notice changes in her husband's behavior: coldness, emotional distance, and rumors that he was seeing another woman. Friends told her they had seen Pedro with someone else, a woman with 2 daughters. The couple began to argue constantly, and by 2016, Pedro asked for a divorce. He denied there was another woman involved, but soon after, he moved to another town to live with Rosa Peral, the woman who would later be at the center of a shocking criminal case. Rosa was also a member of the Guardia Urbana, and like Pedro, she had 2 children from a previous marriage. When Pedro's body was later discovered, the police quickly contacted his ex-wife, Patricia, who confirmed that their relationship had ended long before and that he was now living with another woman from the same police force. Investigators soon learned that Pedro had been temporarily suspended from duty for assaulting a man who had jumped a traffic control point, an incident captured on security cameras. Rosa, on the other hand, was on medical leave at the time, reportedly suffering from depression. When the police reached out to Rosa for questioning, she said the last time she had seen Pedro, They had argued and he had left the house. She claimed he often disappeared for days after their fights and that his temper could be volatile. On May 4th, officers informed her that Pedro had been found dead. Her reaction was surprisingly calm, and when asked to come to the station, she refused, saying she couldn't leave her daughters alone. She promised to come the next day, and from that moment, the investigation began to focus on her. When Rosa arrived at the station on May 5th, she gave her first statement, suggesting that Pedro's death might be linked to the mafia, a theory investigators found strange and baseless. In her second statement, she admitted that she and Pedro had been in a relationship for about 8 months. She said that 2 days before his body was found, they had argued over Pedro's jealousy toward her ex-husband. After the fight, he supposedly left home, but later sent her a message apologizing and declaring his love. According to Rosa, that was the pattern of their relationship: arguments, jealousy, silence, and reconciliation. Because of this, she said she hadn't been alarmed when he disappeared for 48 hours. However, her story did little to help the police. It only painted Pedro as a jealous and impulsive man. Days after his funeral, Rosa returned to the police station to give another statement, this time accusing her ex-husband, Ruben, of being the killer. She described him as controlling and jealous, implying that he might have murdered Pedro out of rage. Ruben, when questioned, admitted that their marriage had been full of fights, but he insisted that his jealousy had been justified. Rosa, he said, had been unfaithful multiple times, first with a co-worker named Albert and later with Pedro. He explained that he had long stopped caring about her romantic life and had never confronted her lovers. His alibi placed him at work at the time of the crime, a claim confirmed by his colleagues and supervisors. With his innocence established, police attention shifted back to Rosa and to the other man in her life, Albert Lopez. Rosa Peral was born on March 27, 1981, in Barcelona. Her father, Francisco Paco Peral, was well known among those close to her, while her mother had passed away recently after complications from surgery. Rosa and Ruben met when they were still very young. In 2010, their first daughter was born, and 2 years later they married and had their second. But Rosa's private life was far from stable. According to Ruben, Rosa began an affair with her colleague Albert Lopez while they both worked at the Guardia Urbana. Their connection started in 2012 when they were assigned to patrol together. By 2013, just a year after the birth of her second daughter, Rosa and Albert began a secret relationship. Even after she separated from Ruben and started dating Pedro, she continued seeing Albert in secret. He had been her lover through 2 consecutive relationships. During her marriage, Ruben had often tried to look the other way, pretending not to notice her infidelities. But there were moments that made denial impossible, like when Rosa attended police events with Albert, openly acting like a couple while still married. Eventually, Ruben could no longer take it, and they separated. But despite their long affair, Rosa and Albert never made their relationship official. She wanted something serious, but he refused. Albert didn't want children and had no interest in becoming stepfather to Rosa's 2 daughters. Around this time, Rosa began seeing Pedro Rodriguez. Unlike Albert, Pedro wanted to build a family with her, and he showed genuine care for her daughters. Even then, Albert couldn't let go. He tried to move on, dating other women, but his obsession with Rosa persisted. Eventually, he reached out to her again, and they met in secret, setting the stage for a tragic chain of events that would soon shock Spain. Albert Lopez had no idea that Rosa was in a relationship with Pedro Rodriguez. To him, she was single, just another woman he was casually seeing. But when he found out that she was actually living with and engaged to Pedro, he was furious. Feeling betrayed, Albert distanced himself and decided to embrace the single life. He started posting photos on social media, vacations, parties, nights out surrounded by other women, as if to prove that he had moved on. Yet, despite his efforts, he couldn't stay away. A few weeks later, he contacted Rosa again, and they began seeing each other in secret. In April 2017, Albert surprised Rosa with a strange and unexpected proposal. One afternoon, while she was sitting on a terrace with friends, he appeared out of nowhere, tossed a small box toward her, and said, "Think about it." Inside was a ring. It was hardly a romantic gesture, more impulsive than sincere, but it revealed his conflicted feelings. Rosa, who had told friends she was already committed to Pedro, didn't reject him. She accepted the ring, took intimate photos wearing it, and sent them to Albert. What shocked her friends later was that in another photo she appeared wearing two engagement rings, one from Pedro on one hand and one from Albert on the other. Rosa's friends, aware of her double life, often asked which man she would ultimately choose. Her answer was blunt. She preferred Pedro because he was better in bed and dressed better. Eventually, Pedro discovered romantic messages between Rosa and Albert, and that's when things began to spiral. As the investigation unfolded, police dug deeper into both Rosa and Albert's professional records. Rosa's file didn't show any incidents of aggression, but it did reveal a controversial episode from her early years in the Guardia Urbana. When she was just 23, shortly after joining the force, someone hacked her email and distributed an intimate photo of her to all her colleagues, a clear case of revenge porn. She filed a complaint over a year later, accusing a sub-inspector of being responsible. However, the accused man's lawyer claimed that during that year, Rosa had continued to have a casual sexual relationship with him and other officers, even while married. Albert, on the other hand, had a far darker record. In August 2014, he was allegedly involved in the death of a street vendor. On that day, Rosa was patrolling with Albert and another officer when they stopped the vendor during a police control. The man reportedly became aggressive, stabbing Rosa and striking her in the head before trying to flee. Albert chased him, and moments later, the vendor fell down a steep slope. He was taken to a hospital, where he died from his injuries. Albert claimed it was an accident, that the man had simply slipped, but his version didn't entirely convince investigators. With Albert's reputation for being short-tempered and violent, there were suspicions he had pushed the man. Unfortunately, without evidence, the case was officially ruled accidental. Years later, when Pedro's murder investigation began, that violent history resurfaced. Detectives seized the phones of Rosa and Albert to examine messages, calls, and GPS locations in the days before and after the crime. What they found was deeply disturbing. On May 1, 2017, the geolocation data from all three phones, Pedro's, Rosa's, and Albert's, placed them at the same location, the house where Rosa and Pedro lived together. That same night, Rosa and Albert spoke by phone, and 4 hours later, Albert made a brief call from a prepaid number before showing up at the house around 2 a.m. The following day, May 2nd, their phones once again appeared in the same area, this time near the home of Rosa's ex-husband, Ruben. It was also the area where investigators would later find Pedro's burned car with his body inside. The coincidence raised immediate suspicion that Ruben might be involved, but his phone records showed he wasn't near the scene, confirming his alibi. Meanwhile, one of Rosa's friends told investigators something even more alarming. 2 days after Pedro's charred body was discovered, Rosa hosted a dinner party at her home. The friend, her partner, and even Albert were there. Everyone acted relaxed, as if nothing had happened, as though a man hadn't just been found dead in horrifying circumstances. Even worse, according to the friend, Rosa and Albert behaved affectionately, like a couple. Another colleague of Rosa's later testified that after that dinner, she confessed to him that she was afraid of Albert. Around the same time, one of Pedro's close friends, a lawyer, refused to represent Rosa when she asked for help. He was already assisting Pedro's family and couldn't defend someone under suspicion in the same case. As pressure mounted, Rosa returned to the police station once again. This time, she changed her story. No longer pointing at her ex-husband, she directly accused Albert Lopez, her former lover, her secret companion, and now, her alleged accomplice. It defied logic. If she truly believed Albert had murdered Pedro Rodriguez, why would she share a meal with him instead of running to the police? The only thing that slightly supported her new accusation was that she had once told a colleague she was afraid of Albert, but even that, investigators suspected, might have been a calculated move to build herself a defense. Eventually, police arrested both Rosa and Albert and searched their homes. In Albert's apartment, nothing overtly suspicious was found, but his car was spotless, unnaturally clean, and filled with the overpowering scent of air freshener, cleaning products, and gasoline. In Rosa's home, luminol tests revealed faint traces of blood on the walls, towels, and various items throughout the house. Investigators also noted fresh paint on certain areas, and that she had recently gotten rid of a sofa and redecorated a specific room, as if attempting to conceal something. Inside a wardrobe, police found Pedro's police badge, ID card, and phone. While it made sense that his belongings would be in the home he shared with her, what raised alarms was that text messages had been sent from that phone after the date Pedro was believed to have died, May 2nd. Someone was clearly pretending to be him. According to forensic evidence, Pedro was killed between 3 and 6 a.m. on May 2nd. That same morning, the GPS locations of all three phones, Rosa's, Albert's, and Pedro's, matched at the couple's home. Later that day, their phones were tracked again near Rubain's house, the area where Pedro's burned car was later found. 2 days afterward, when police first visited Rosa, she refused to let them inside, saying her daughters were asleep. She also showed officers a WhatsApp exchange that she claimed was from Pedro, messages investigators later determined had been sent after his death. When police finally brought Rosa and Albert in for questioning, they used a technique meant to expose contradictions. Each time one of them made a statement, officers relayed it to the other to see how they would react. As expected, both pointed fingers. Rosa blamed Albert, and Albert blamed Rosa. It was evident that one, or perhaps both, were lying. In 2018, a new piece of testimony emerged. A neighbor, who had secretly been romantically involved with Rosa, told police that on the night of May 2nd, he had messaged her asking about the sound of a chainsaw coming from her house. He admitted he hadn't reported it earlier because of their affair. He didn't want to expose the relationship. He also revealed that whenever Pedro got angry and left home, Rosa would call him over, implying that their encounters often happened while Pedro was away. Investigators searched for the chainsaw, but never found it. By February 2020, 3 years after the crime, the long-awaited trial began. It was one of the most followed cases in Spain, filled with sensational twists and salacious revelations. The hearings were lengthy, and because of the COVID-19 pandemic, many sessions were held in empty courtrooms. Rosa herself missed several sessions after testing positive for the virus. On the stand, she claimed that Albert was the one who had killed Pedro. She said that in the early morning hours of May 2nd, he arrived at her home, took an axe, and attacked Pedro while she ran upstairs to protect her daughters. Rosa insisted she was a victim, that Albert was violent and had even hit her in the past during police outings. She said he forced her to help clean the crime scene afterward, threatening her if she refused. Albert, for his part, told a completely different story. He claimed that when he arrived, Pedro was already dead and that Rosa asked him for help getting rid of the body. He said she manipulated him, that she wanted to frame her ex-husband Ruben, and that's why they went to his neighborhood to burn Pedro's car. In doing so, Albert effectively confessed to participating in the cover-up, sealing his own fate. Perhaps the most chilling testimony came from Antonia, the stepmother of Rosa's daughters. She told the court that the children had seen their mother covered in blood and that they had watched her lead Pedro down the stairs that night. The girls described him as disoriented, walking like a robot, suggesting he might have been drugged. Investigators believed he was likely sedated with medication he took for sciatica, pills that were missing from the house. A fellow inmate of Rosa's later testified that Rosa had privately confessed to her, saying she had indeed given Pedro the medication dissolved in water to calm him down after a heated argument. Once he was incapacitated, she and Albert carried out the killing. That night, the two left the house in separate vehicles, Rosa driving her car, Albert behind the wheel of Pedro's. They drove to the Foix Reservoir, where they set Pedro's car on fire with his body inside. In the end, investigators concluded that the motive behind the murder was twofold. Rosa and Albert wanted to eliminate Pedro so they could continue their affair without interference, and they also hoped to frame Rosa's ex-husband Ruben, with whom she was locked in a bitter custody battle over their daughters. But their plan unraveled. Prosecutors demanded 25 years in prison for Rosa and 24 for Albert, arguing that they had drugged Pedro to render him helpless before killing him. The evidence pointed clearly to premeditation and cruelty. In 2021, the court delivered its verdict. Both Rosa Peral and Albert Lopez were found guilty of the murder of Pedro Rodriguez. They were also ordered to pay nearly €885,000 in compensation to Pedro's family. Rosa received 25 years in prison for aggravated murder due to her relationship with the victim. Since she had been incarcerated since 2017, she had already served about 6 years at the time of sentencing. Albert was given 20 years and had been behind bars for the same duration. During his imprisonment, Albert reportedly took part in rehabilitation programs and expressed remorse, acknowledging his role in the crime, an attitude that could grant him limited prison privileges. Both Rosa and Albert attempted to appeal their sentences, but Spain's Supreme Court dismissed their requests. Still, Albert's confession opened a small possibility for Rosa's case to be reconsidered in the future. Even behind bars, Rosa Peral's life continued to attract public attention. Reports surfaced of her engaging in relationships with other inmates, both men and women. One woman claimed Rosa had become obsessed with her, while another inmate said she overheard details about the affair. On the legal side, her earlier revenge porn case, filed years before the murder, ended with the sub-inspector she accused being acquitted. Even though Rosa had submitted a recording in which the man allegedly admitted to leaking her intimate photo, the court ruled that the audio was inconclusive and that the computer used for the leak was never found. And remember Albert's earlier involvement in the death of the street vendor known as El Boniato. According to a fellow inmate, Rosa allegedly confessed that Albert had indeed killed the man, and that afterward he told her he had done it for her saying no one would ever hurt her again. In more recent years, Rosa launched a lawsuit against Netflix over the series Burning Body, which dramatized her case. She demanded 30 million euros in damages, claiming the show violated her daughter's privacy and harmed her reputation as a mother. However, because her ex-husband holds legal custody of the children, only he has the authority to pursue such a claim. From prison, Rosa also participated in interviews for the documentary The Tapes of Rosa Peral, where she continued to insist on her innocence. She denied hiding assets from the court, saying she had merely transferred money to her father to prevent it from being seized, not to conceal it. Today, Rosa's daughters, now teenagers aged 15 and 13, still visit her regularly, always accompanied by their grandfather, Rosa's father. Despite everything, he continues to stand by her, convinced of her innocence. Rosa Peral maintains that she was framed, that she loved Pedro and could never have harmed him. Yet to this day, the courts, investigators, and most of Spain remain convinced of the opposite. Her father's unwavering faith in her innocence stands as one of the few remaining fragments of loyalty in a story built on lies, betrayal, and irreversible tragedy. Thanks for tuning in to Unreal True Crime. If you're intrigued by mysteries from around the world, check out our new channel, Latin Crimes, where we dive into the gripping true crime stories of Latin America. Don't miss out. Subscribe now for more thrilling investigations. It was a warm Saturday night in Southern California, the kind of evening that felt calm, predictable, just another weekend dinner in a bustling shopping center. Gloria Zamora had just finished a meal with someone she deeply trusted. The conversation was light, the mood hopeful. By all accounts, it was supposed to be a good night. At 9:40 p.m., she stepped out of the restaurant and began walking toward the parking lot. What happened next took less than 60 seconds. A figure emerged from the shadows. No warning, no time to run, just the deafening sound of gunfire, and then silence. Within minutes, 3 lives were changed forever, and when authorities confirmed the identity of the gunman, the entire community was left stunned. This is the story behind that moment, a story of ambition, betrayal, obsession, and a woman who refused to stay silent. If you're a fan of true crime and criminal investigations, you won't want to miss our new book, The Ultimate Book of Serial Killers, 180 Files of the World's Most Notorious Murderers, now available on Amazon. You can also purchase the PDF version directly from our website for instant download. You'll find the link in the video description and in a pinned comment. Now, let's dive into today's case. Gloria Zamora was born around 1985 in Fresno, California. She was the third child in a family of Mexican immigrants, both seeking a better future far from their homeland. Her mother came from Palpa, Zacatecas. Her father was originally from Colima. When Gloria was only 2 or 3 years old, her parents separated. The home environment had been difficult. Her father struggled with alcoholism, and there were accounts of abuse that left deep emotional scars. Gloria didn't hold many memories of her father, but she understood that her mother had once come dangerously close to losing her life. After the separation, Gloria, her mother, and her 3 older siblings moved to East Los Angeles to live with her grandmother. It was a strict household, firm rules, little tenderness. While her mother and older brother launched a small food business to stay afloat, daily life was still a struggle. Gloria described her childhood as anything but easy. She was only able to reach 8th grade before life took a different turn. At just 16 years old, Gloria became pregnant with her first daughter. The baby's father was even younger than she was, and he didn't stay around. Suddenly, Gloria faced motherhood alone while still being a teenager herself. Supported by her family, she relocated to a city in San Bernardino County. That's where she began to rebuild. After giving birth, she juggled multiple jobs, sometimes 2, even 3 at once, and studied at night in a determined effort to finish high school. Her only goal was to give her daughter a better life. As time went on, Gloria's bond with her siblings began to unravel. While she tried to stay focused and responsible, they fell into the grip of substance abuse. That created growing tension and distance between them. By the age of 20, Gloria got married for the first time. She had 2 more children during this period, and for a while things seemed stable. But slowly, cracks in the marriage began to show. Signs of infidelity emerged, and the trust broke down. Gloria hesitated to end it. She was afraid of raising 3 children on her own. But life had another test in store. Around the age of 24, during a routine doctor's visit, she was diagnosed with thyroid cancer. The news was devastating. It shook her world and forced her to reevaluate everything. Battling a life-threatening illness while caring for her kids and trying to keep her home together wasn't easy, but it pushed her to make one of the hardest decisions of her life, to face divorce and move forward alone. Not long after her separation, Gloria met Thomas Alberto Tamayo. He was striking, someone people noticed right away. Neighbors described him as charming, magnetic, and seductive. Many women in the neighborhood were drawn to him. But when Thomas met Gloria, something shifted. Their connection was strong. Over time, they grew close and became a couple. For Gloria, it felt like the beginning of a new chapter, one filled with hope, even after years of struggle and survival. After marrying Thomas, Gloria's life seemed to settle into a new rhythm. Together, they built a blended family full of energy and love. From this relationship came 4 more children, including a pair of twins born in 2017. With 6 children now in her care, Gloria embraced a busy, vibrant household. She was known for her relentless drive, always on the move, always thinking about what more she could do to support her family. Her entrepreneurial spirit never faded. Around the time her twins were born, Gloria came up with a new idea, one that merged her passion with purpose. She turned to social media, hoping to create something impactful. Fitness had always played an important role in her life. After her last pregnancy, she faced new challenges with her body and identity. Instead of hiding them, she chose to share them. Gloria began uploading videos to digital platforms, short routines, realistic advice, and motivational messages crafted specifically for mothers who, like her, were learning to love and care for their bodies again. In the beginning, the response was minimal. Most of her views came from men, not the audience she had hoped to reach. But she didn't give up. She kept showing up, day after day, fueled by consistency and the desire to create a real community. Slowly, things began to change. Her message started reaching the right people, women who saw their own stories reflected in hers, women who wanted hope, strength, and someone who truly understood. Gloria became a fitness influencer, not overnight, but step by step. Her videos began gaining traction. Her following expanded. Eventually, she reached over 165,000 followers. Her voice resonated with hundreds of mothers across the country who saw her not just as a trainer, but as an inspiration. By early 2025, at the age of 40, Gloria began to dream bigger. Her digital presence had opened doors, but her heart still craved more connection, more impact. Around this time, she met Hector Garduno, a man who, like her, was deeply committed to physical wellness. Hector, a father of 4 daughters and a few years her senior, was known for his integrity and dedication. What began between them was rooted in admiration and respect. They shared a vision, not just romantic, but professional. With Hector's support, Gloria's confidence grew. She began teaching her own fitness classes at a local gym. Clients were drawn not just to her techniques, but to her story. They saw in her a symbol of resilience. Together, Gloria and Hector started working toward a shared dream, opening a gym of their own. Around mid-2025, she took yet another bold step in her journey. She joined a podcast that focused on female empowerment, a platform for women to speak openly about trauma, healing, and transformation. In episode 18, Gloria let herself be vulnerable. She opened up about her teenage pregnancy and how she navigated motherhood at such a young age. She recalled her cancer diagnosis and how it reshaped her life. She revisited the emotional toll of her first marriage and the absence of support from her own family when she needed it most. But it was in a later episode, released on June 16th, that Gloria revealed something that shocked many of her followers. Behind the smiling videos and positive messages, she had been living a silent battle. She spoke candidly for the first time about her ongoing separation from Thomas. Their divorce had turned bitter. She described the emotional abuse she had endured, how it wore her down daily, how it clouded her confidence and shook her sense of self-worth. She confessed that living with someone who constantly tried to tear her down, who made her feel unworthy and small, was a pain no one could see through a phone screen. Her story resonated deeply with listeners. It was raw, real, and courageous. It reminded everyone that even the strongest voices online often carry invisible scars, and that healing sometimes begins the moment we decide to speak the truth out loud. Gloria had reached a turning point in her life. She was no longer willing to live in silence. She wanted her children to grow up with an example of strength, dignity, and courage. What many saw as a powerful act of vulnerability, opening up about her toxic marriage on a public platform, was meant to inspire other women to break free. But that same brave confession may have triggered a chain of devastating events. 5 days later, on Saturday, June 21st, Gloria went out to dinner at a sushi restaurant located inside a well-known shopping center. She wasn't alone. Hector, her business partner, was with her. The evening appeared to unfold without incident. Casual conversation, shared goals, the next step in a life she was carefully rebuilding. But at 9:40 p.m., just as they were walking toward the parking lot, everything shattered in an instant. A man approached them quickly and without warning. With no words exchanged and no chance to react, he raised a weapon and opened fire. First at Hector, then at Gloria. It was a brutal, calculated attack. As the shooter tried to flee, a police officer who happened to be off duty nearby heard the gunshots and acted immediately. He intercepted the suspect in his vehicle, ordering him to stop, But instead of surrendering, the man turned violent, leading to a shootout. Within moments, the attacker was fatally wounded. Authorities later confirmed his identity. It was Thomas, Gloria's husband. Meanwhile, paramedics rushed to help Gloria and Hector. They were both transported to a nearby hospital, but their injuries were too severe. Despite medical efforts, neither survived. News of the tragedy spread fast. Within hours, the headlines took over social media. Thousands of users expressed disbelief, sadness, and outrage. Gloria's name began trending. Her followers, her community, and women across the country flooded platforms with messages of grief and remembrance. They reposted her videos, clips of her smiling, encouraging others, sharing strength. What stunned many was the timing. Just days before, Gloria had revealed her painful divorce. She had spoken openly about the abuse, the struggle, and her decision to walk away. For some, this wasn't just a tragedy. It was a crime foretold. People began calling it what it was: a femicide. As the investigation unfolded, disturbing details about her marriage to Thomas emerged. The couple had reportedly faced tension since the birth of their first child. Arguments over money had evolved into deeper rifts. Gloria worked multiple jobs while Thomas showed little interest in helping around the house. She tried to manage everything: work, children, and a home, while he appeared detached and passive. One constant source of conflict was order. Gloria had a deep need for cleanliness and structure, something Thomas rarely respected. But the breaking point came when she shared her dream of creating fitness videos aimed at mothers. Still recovering from the birth of their twins, Gloria felt insecure about her body. She hoped her content could motivate others going through the same. But instead of supporting her, Thomas reportedly mocked her. He dismissed her efforts, belittled her appearance, and claimed no one would care about a woman with stretch marks and a soft belly. His words were cruel, designed not to help, but to silence. Initially, she listened. She doubted herself and let the project go. But over time, her daughters encouraged her to try again. Their belief in her lit the fire that Thomas had tried to put out. In the days that followed her death, Gloria's oldest daughter spoke out. Through her pain, she became the family's voice, strong and honest. She shared how much she missed her mother, how she still expected to see her walk through the door like nothing had happened. She spoke of the emptiness, the longing, and the need to stay strong, for her siblings, for her grandmother, for everyone left behind. Rumors began circulating that Hector had been Gloria's new partner, but her daughter clarified that this wasn't the case. At the time of the attack, they were simply concluding a work meeting, finalizing plans for the gym they had dreamed of opening together. He was her partner, but in business, not love. Her eldest son described her marriage to Thomas in simple, devastating terms: a living hell. While Thomas portrayed himself as a respectable, supportive stepfather to outsiders, the reality at home was far different. The older daughters, too, had sensed the truth. They had long disliked Thomas. They said he wore a mask in public, polite, charming, almost princely, but in private he was a narcissist, obsessed with controlling his image and narrative. He often told others that he provided for the household, but in reality it was Gloria who worked tirelessly, managing multiple responsibilities, financial and domestic, to keep the family afloat. After her last pregnancy, she underwent a reconstructive surgery to remove excess skin. Yet Thomas took credit, bragging to friends that he had paid for it. In the final months before the tragedy, while Gloria was growing professionally, gaining thousands of followers, and building a loyal customer base for her online store, something in Thomas shifted. Resentment took root. Jealousy bloomed. He began to mock her, undermining her appearance, her success, and her self-worth. Bit by bit, she lost respect for him. Emotionally, she distanced herself. As early as a year before her death, Gloria had told Thomas she no longer wanted to be with him, but he refused to grant a divorce. It wasn't until early 2025 that she finally decided to end their 15-year marriage. She was done waiting. Gloria's mother later revealed that Thomas had a history of obsessive behavior. He stalked her daughter. He followed her from work. He made threats. In her words, he would do anything to destroy her. In the wake of her murder, the community rallied behind her children. A GoFundMe campaign was launched to raise support for her family. The organizers described Gloria as a radiant presence, a motivator, and a mother whose life was stolen in a senseless act of violence. The fundraiser spread quickly, collecting over $25,000 within days to assist her 7 children, ranging from 8 to 24 years old, and to cover funeral costs. Hector's daughters also launched a campaign. They described their father as a devoted, hard-working man who had loved deeply and lived with purpose. His loss, they said, had left an unfillable void in their hearts. But not everyone on the internet showed compassion. Soon, social media turned into a battlefield. While many demanded justice for Gloria, others began to defend Thomas. Some users claimed his story deserved to be told too, that he had been a loyal husband, a dedicated father, and a provider for the family. They pointed to the longevity of their marriage as evidence of something worth preserving. More disturbingly, others blamed Gloria. Some accused her of wounding Thomas's pride. Others questioned her choices as a mother, claiming she should have dressed more modestly or behaved with more restraint. It was a disturbing undercurrent of misogyny that sought to rationalize the violence she endured. Videos surfaced from people who knew Thomas personally, some outright accusing Gloria of emotional manipulation. They painted her as the abuser. One even cited a supposed domestic violence complaint against her filed in January, where she was allegedly arrested for attacking Thomas. Some insisted that Thomas had done everything for her, that he had given her everything she wanted, yet nothing had been enough. They alleged that Gloria and Hector had publicly mocked Thomas, implying that repeated humiliation pushed him past his breaking point. The investigation revealed chilling new information. In the days before the murder, Thomas had begun tracking Gloria. He had allegedly installed a GPS-like device on her car to monitor her movements in real time. On the night of the attack, he followed her from the moment she left home, hiding in the shadows for nearly an hour, watching. He knew she was with Hector. He knew where they were, and he knew what he planned to do. Police later speculated that his plan didn't end at the restaurant. After the shooting, Thomas may have intended to go to Gloria's home, to harm her children next. No matter how the story is told, no matter whose version is louder, one brutal truth remains. 11 children lost their parents that night. 11 lives now marked by a profound, irreparable absence. Their sources of love, protection, and guidance were stolen in a moment. That is the deepest tragedy of this story. Whatever else is said, whatever debates unfold online, this is what matters most. 11 children now live in the aftermath. And so, the question remains, how do we protect the next Gloria? How do we make sure this doesn't happen again? Thanks for tuning in to Unreal True Crime. If you're intrigued by mysteries from around the world, check out our new channel, Latin Crimes, where we dive into the gripping true crime stories of Latin America. Don't miss out. Subscribe now for more thrilling investigations. It was Christmas Eve in Carnation, Washington. Inside the Anderson family home, the air was warm with the scent of pine and wrapping paper scattered across the table. Outside, the winter sky was fading, and the quiet country property sat tucked away behind a locked gate. By nightfall, the scene inside had changed. The tree still stood, lights glowing softly, but the living room told another story. The phone line had gone dead. Footsteps had stopped, and in the silence, the fate of 3 generations was sealed before anyone could call for help. What happened that night would leave a small community in shock and reveal a chain of events driven by resentment, betrayal, and something far darker. If you're a fan of true crime and criminal investigations, you won't want to miss our new book, The Ultimate Book of Serial Killers: 180 Files of the World's Most Notorious Murderers, now available on Amazon. You can also purchase the PDF version directly from our website for instant download. You'll find the link in the video description and in a pinned comment. Now, let's dive into today's case. Wayne Anderson, age 60, was a respected Boeing engineer who had built not only a long career but also a solid, loving marriage with his wife, Judy Anderson. Judy, 61, worked for the United States Postal Service and was equally admired in their close-knit community of Carnation, Washington. For 31 years, the couple had shared a life together, raising 3 children, Mary, Scott, and Michelle. Mary, their eldest daughter, lived quietly in North Bend. Their middle child, 32-year-old Scott Anderson, was married to 31-year-old Erica Mantle Anderson. The young couple were devoted parents to 2 children, Olivia, age 5, and Nathan, age 3. Living in Black Diamond, about 25 minutes from Wayne and Judy, Scott worked long hours in construction to provide for his family, while Erica dedicated herself to caring for the children full-time. The youngest of the Anderson children, 29-year-old Michelle Kristen Anderson, was a very different personality. She lived with her boyfriend, 29-year-old Joseph Thomas McEnroe, in Fall City. The two had first met in an online fantasy fiction chat room, quickly forming a bond that led them to move in together in 2004. Renting a mobile home, Michelle listed her job on the application as a night security guard for Nintendo, while Joseph stated he was employed at Target. Neighbors remembered the couple as strange and difficult to approach. Some noted they would avoid eye contact and react with hostility to the smallest perceived offenses, such as a car parking in their spot or a neighbor's pet straying into their yard. Michelle often called herself the black sheep of the family. She told others her relationship with her parents was volatile, claiming her father had hit her and that her mother was cold and unkind. Judy, however, worried about Michelle's life choices and regularly confided in her best friend, Linda, about her concerns. Judy made monthly trips to Michelle's home, always bringing food and necessities. Michelle claimed she had no desire to live on her parents' property, yet by 2007, she and Joseph had done exactly that, moving into a trailer on Wayne and Judy's land, rent-free. By Christmas Eve of 2007, tensions within the family remained largely unseen to outsiders. Wayne and Judy were hosting the holiday gathering at their Carnation home. Scott, Erica, and the children planned to arrive in the evening to share the festivities. But before the celebration could begin, Michelle and Joseph, already on the property, entered the main house around 4 p.m. One carried a revolver, the other, a handgun. Inside, Judy was busy wrapping presents in a back room. Joseph distracted her while Michelle confronted her father. Her attempt to shoot him failed. Whether due to a misfire or a missed shot remains uncertain. Joseph stepped in, raising his weapon and firing a fatal shot to Wayne's head. Michelle and Joseph then turned their attention to Judy, shooting her 3 times. The couple dragged both bodies to a shed behind the house, attempting to hide the evidence by covering blood with towels and rugs. Roughly an hour later, Scott, Erica, and the children arrived, unaware of the horror that had unfolded. They entered the living room, settling on the couch, when Michelle suddenly opened fire on her brother. Multiple rounds struck Scott, killing him where he sat. Erica was shot soon after, wounded but alive long enough to grab the cordless phone. At 5:13 p.m., she managed to dial 911 despite being hit 3 times, her children just feet away as the nightmare continued. Joseph McEnroe snatched the phone from Erica's hands, yanking out the batteries before hurling it violently against the wall. The sudden silence ended the desperate 911 call mid-sentence. Erica's pleas for mercy filled the room, but Joseph raised his weapon and fired a single fatal shot to her head. She collapsed instantly. The chaos did not end there. Joseph turned his attention to the children. 5-year-old Olivia was shot first, her life taken in an instant. Just moments later, 3-year-old Nathan, still small enough to believe in kindness, picked up the fallen phone batteries from the floor. In an innocent gesture, he reached out to hand them back to Joseph. Without hesitation, Joseph leveled the gun at the boy. Nathan was still clinging to his mother's chest when the shot rang out, killing him instantly. The 911 call Erica had made moments earlier had triggered a response from local deputies. At 5:45 p.m., law enforcement arrived at the Anderson property to investigate. Michelle, anticipating that the police might come, had already taken steps to keep them out. She locked the front gate at the end of the long driveway, blocking vehicle access. Without making any effort to enter the property or check on the occupants, the responding officers turned away, completely unaware of the massacre that had just taken place inside. 2 days later, on December 26, 2007, Judy Anderson failed to appear for her shift at the United States Post Office in Carnation. Her longtime friend and co-worker Linda called her home, but there was no answer. Alarmed, Linda decided to drive to the Anderson residence to check on her. When she arrived, she found the property's gate locked, just as the police had 2 days earlier. Unlike the deputies, Linda walked around the barrier, determined to reach the house. The front door was shut and she knocked repeatedly, calling out Judy's name. Receiving no response, she tried the door and was startled to find it unlocked. An unusual detail, as Judy was known to always keep her home secured. Pushing the door open, Linda stepped inside and called again. "Judy, it's Linda. We're worried about you." Silence filled the air. Then, looking down, she saw the body of a man lying motionless on the floor. At first, she thought perhaps he was unconscious from carbon monoxide poisoning and instinctively prepared to drag him outside. But as she stepped closer, horror gripped her. He had been shot in the head. As her eyes adjusted, Linda saw more victims lying nearby. Realizing the enormity of the situation, she rushed to call 911, her voice breaking as she reported, "There's been a murder. There are 3 people dead that I can see right now. There's a baby, and a man, and a woman, and she's my best friend." By 9:30 a.m., King County Sheriff's deputies had arrived. Inside the house, they found the bodies of Scott Anderson, his wife Erica, and their two children. Nathan was still pressed against his mother's chest, as if seeking safety in death, while Olivia lay beneath her mother's body. All four had been executed with gunshots to the head. A search of the property led investigators to a shed behind the house, where they discovered two more victims, Wayne and Judy Anderson. Like the others, both had been shot. Hours later, at approximately 11 a.m., Michelle Anderson and Joseph McEnroe drove up to the crime scene. Detectives immediately noticed their unusual demeanor. Michelle introduced herself as Wayne and Judy's daughter, explaining that she lived in a trailer on the property. Neither she nor Joseph asked what had happened, why law enforcement was present in such numbers, or whether her family was safe. This lack of concern, amid yellow crime scene tape, a line of police vehicles, and a mobile command center, stood out sharply to investigators. Sensing that the pair were withholding information, detectives separated Michelle and Joseph for questioning. Both gave a strange explanation for their whereabouts on Christmas Eve, claiming they had set out to drive to Las Vegas to get married, but had gotten lost and decided to return home instead. In their initial account, Michelle Anderson and Joseph McEnroe claimed that on the morning of Christmas Eve, they had gone to Michelle's parents, Wayne and Judy Anderson, to share happy news. They were planning to get married. They said Wayne and Judy had been delighted for them. But when investigators revisited their statements, the cracks in the story quickly appeared. Under pressure, both Michelle and Joseph admitted that this version of events was a fabrication they had agreed upon beforehand. Michelle's composure shattered. In a sudden outburst, she exclaimed, "What the hell have I done? I'm a monster." After waiving their constitutional rights, the pair gave full and lengthy confessions, admitting to the murders of all 6 members of the Anderson family. Michelle even took detectives to the location where she and Joseph had discarded one of the 2 firearms used in the killings. During her interrogation, Michelle made it clear that much of her anger had been directed toward her brother, Scott Anderson. She described how their relationship had once been close, but had deteriorated after he married Erica. She alleged that Scott owed her a significant sum of money, approximately $40,000, stemming from what she claimed were multiple loans given to him over the years, the most recent several years prior. Michelle expressed resentment toward her parents as well, claiming they refused to support her in the dispute with Scott. She believed they favored him and felt they had repeatedly slighted and mistreated her. Adding to her grievances was her anger over Wayne and Judy's request that she and Joseph begin paying rent for the trailer and the land they had been living on rent-free for over a year. When detectives asked why she had chosen to kill her entire family, Michelle's response was chilling. She said she was tired of everybody stepping on her and had decided that if her grievances were not resolved by December 24th, her plan was to eliminate them all. When pressed about the murders of Erica and the children, Michelle stated that she didn't want them living with the memory of what had happened and didn't want any witnesses. Joseph later told investigators that he had been the one to kill the children, explaining that Michelle had instructed him to do so because she could not bring herself to do it personally. They both repeated the claim that they did not want Olivia and Nathan to grow up with the trauma of witnessing their parents' deaths. With the confessions and the details of their motive established, the King County Prosecuting Attorney's Office formally charged Michelle Anderson and Joseph McEnroe on December 28, 2007, with 6 counts each of aggravated first-degree murder with a firearm. Despite their admissions, the legal process was slow and costly, dragging on for years. 10 months after the killings, In October 2008, the prosecutor announced he would seek the death penalty for both defendants. He cited the magnitude of the crimes, the murders spanning 3 generations, and the killing of 2 young children as factors that justified capital punishment. But this stance met resistance. The judge ruled against pursuing the death penalty, and the Washington governor later declared that no executions would take place while he was in office. Around this time, Michelle herself stated publicly that she wished to be executed. She described the decision as the hardest she had ever made, but one she felt was necessary to take responsibility for her actions. Years later, on September 5, 2013, the Washington State Supreme Court overturned the judge's ruling, reinstating the possibility of capital punishment. The prospect of execution appeared to change Michelle's stance. She withdrew her earlier statements and, with a new legal team in place, shifted her approach. Ultimately, both Michelle Anderson and Joseph McEnroe would be tried separately, nearly 7.5 years after the Christmas Eve massacre. Joseph McEnroe's trial began in January 2015. His defense team presented him as a man coerced into murder by his then-girlfriend, Michelle Anderson. According to the defense, it was Michelle who had harbored the desire to see her family dead, and Joseph was merely a tool in carrying out her plan. Jurors listened to a recorded interview in which Michelle herself told a King County Sheriff's detective that the murders had been her idea from the very beginning. On the tape, she admitted that she had pushed Joseph into it, accepting full responsibility and saying she should have walked away. Joseph's attorneys argued that Michelle had molded him into what they called her attack dog, manipulating him from every possible angle until he agreed to kill. They claimed his mental health struggles, coupled with a fragile emotional state, had made him especially vulnerable to her influence. In court, Joseph's background was also brought under scrutiny. His aunt, Mary Turner, testified about his turbulent childhood, describing a mother who was both financially unstable and emotionally volatile. She alleged that Joseph had been beaten, verbally abused, and used as leverage in her attempts to extract money from her own parents. When testifying in his own defense, Joseph claimed that his decision to kill Olivia and Nathan Anderson was, in his view, a twisted act of mercy. Ending their lives, he insisted, was the only way to free them. He described their deaths as quick and painless, a statement that left the courtroom visibly shaken. On March 25, 2015, after weeks of testimony, the jury returned guilty verdicts on all 6 counts of aggravated first-degree murder, along with the associated firearm enhancements. Joseph's demeanor on the stand was peculiar. He appeared heavily medicated, often pausing, sighing, or struggling to find words. At moments, he seemed on the verge of tears. He admitted that thoughts of the murders haunted him constantly, lingering in his mind every day since that night. However, the senior deputy prosecutor accused Joseph of deliberately altering his behavior, even modifying his speech patterns and appearance, in a calculated attempt to draw sympathy from the jury. Joseph, for his part, expressed remorse, claiming he had taken the lives of people who had shown him nothing but kindness. He told the court that if there were any way to undo what he had done, to bring them back or ease the pain he had caused, he would do it without hesitation. During closing arguments, the prosecution urged the jury to impose the ultimate penalty, death. Addressing the panel, the senior deputy prosecutor told them that the punishment was both just and necessary. But the jurors could not reach a unanimous decision. 8 voted in favor of execution, while 4 opposed it. Without unanimity, Washington law required the court to impose the only remaining option: life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. On May 13, 2015, Joseph McEnroe was formally sentenced, ensuring he would spend the rest of his life behind bars. 8 years after the murders, Michelle Anderson finally faced trial. Her proceedings began in January 2016, but the death penalty, initially a possibility, was taken off the table. The prosecutor explained that after two separate juries in recent capital cases, including McEnroe's, had declined to impose death sentences, it was no longer in the interest of justice to pursue it against Michelle. Given that she was considered equally culpable, her potential punishment would be aligned with Joseph's: life without parole. Throughout the trial, Michelle's demeanor fluctuated. At times she sat with her head lowered, appearing tearful, but she chose not to speak to the court directly. Her defense attorney claimed Michelle was deeply remorseful and had apologized to everyone affected. The prosecutor took a very different position, describing her motive as pure, unadulterated greed. In her first police interview, he noted, she had mentioned money over 35 times while explaining why she killed her family. Jurors heard recordings from that interview in which Michelle contradicted herself repeatedly. She shifted from calling herself a monster for killing her family to claiming her parents and brother had abused her for years. No credible evidence was ever presented to support her abuse allegations. In reality, those who knew Wayne, Judy, and Scott described them as warm, compassionate people. Erica and her children were equally blameless. Testimony revealed that Michelle harbored deep animosity toward Erica, believing she had driven a wedge between Michelle and Scott. Michelle's defense team called no witnesses. They cited years of difficulty working with her, noting her refusal to cooperate or even communicate with them. The courtroom, however, heard from the victim's family members. Erica's mother addressed Michelle directly, recalling that after being shot, Erica still managed to call 911, not just for herself, but to try to save her children. Michelle's sister, Mary Anderson, also spoke. Her voice heavy with grief, she told Michelle that she would have the rest of her life in prison to reflect on her actions. The judge commended the resilience of the secondary victims, family members, friends, first responders, and jurors, who had endured gruesome testimony and graphic crime scene images. He acknowledged their suffering, saying, "Even though you didn't do anything wrong, it's still your fault. You've all suffered tremendous losses. Fortunately, this lengthy chapter of your nightmare is almost over." As the proceedings drew to a close, Michelle erupted, shouting at the judge and accusing her court-appointed attorneys of lying to her. She said she wanted to leave jail temporarily to hire private counsel, but her request was denied. She placed blame squarely on the judge, claiming he was violating her rights. On March 4, 2016, Michelle Anderson was convicted of 6 counts of aggravated first-degree murder. On April 21st, she was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, matching the fate of her former boyfriend and co-defendant. With both trials concluded, the Anderson family finally saw justice served, though it came 8 years after the murders. The precise motive behind Michelle's actions may never be known, whether it was greed, jealousy, rage, or a combination of all three. What is certain is that two people bound by a toxic relationship destroyed 3 generations in a single night. Perhaps Michelle could not stand to see the happiness Scott had found with Erica, or the close-knit family they had built together. As for Joseph, his participation remains one of the case's most disturbing mysteries. With no clear personal motive, he still chose to take part, and even carried out the murders of the children. The tragedy remains devastating. Today, Joseph McEnroe serves his sentence at Washington State Penitentiary. Michelle Anderson is held at the Washington Corrections Center for Women. Neither will ever be released. And while justice was served in the legal sense, the wounds left by the Carnation murders will never fully heal. Thanks for tuning in to Unreal True Crime. If you're intrigued by mysteries from around the world, check out our new channel, Latin Crimes, where we dive into the gripping true crime stories of Latin America. Don't miss out. Subscribe now for more thrilling investigations.